Welcome to Page Turners, a weekly bookish podcast for every kind of reader. Whether you want to explore a variety of genres, tick books off your growing TBR, or simply skip the reading for book club, we've got you covered. That's Liv.
And that's Amy. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Let's just talk about the I was going to say the bear in the room. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Amy and I can't really do this properly because we are recording in the wrong order.
We ever recorded in the wrong order before? So it's the first time we've ever done it.
No, we did. We recorded Southern Vampires before we recorded
Yeah.
Divine Rivals, I think. But that
Okay.
was but that was in one night. Remember, it was like our first Christmas together. And
Mm-hmm. Oh.
we did Southern Vampires, then we went downstairs, we had dinner, we had a few drinks, then we came up and then we did Divine Rivals. But that was within the same night. This will be a week apart, so how strange is that
Yeah,
going to be?
I
Yeah,
know.
this episode is out on the 27th of January, and it is currently the 7th of January.
It's
So
the 7th. Yeah, we've given ourselves so much time, which is very unlike us.
yeah, and it will not last. That's what we have to appreciate is that it will not last.
No, so we're making the most of it, but Liv is completely right. This is probably going to sound extremely stilted because we're doing it all out of order and we don't quite know what we're doing, but that's okay.
Welcome back this week. Yeah, yeah, I styled that out.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been, Amy? You been okay?
Been all right. Yeah. Yeah, just kind of back to the January feeling again. Some people love it, some people don't like it, some people like the new start, some people like feel it's really dark and depressing and a bit meh. I think I sit somewhere in the middle, to be honest. I like the kind of idea of a new year, new me. I do like the idea of it, and then it just becomes a bit much and you just feel like the pressure's too great.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
How fuck it, we'll talk about it. We won't have talked about it last week, I'm sure. Oh, that's great. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I don't do them. I just
No.
don't do them. Nah, I'm just not, I'm like, not, I'm unique. No, I just don't do them. I just try new start, try and be a bit kinder to myself, try and appreciate that it's a bit grim. This a bit of a grim time of year. So just try and find good things to fill the days. And yeah, try and eat a bit better. But that's not because I want to not have a resolution to lose weight or anything. It's just I've ate so much cheese over the Christmas period that my body is crying out for something nutritious rather than just cheese and crackers and chocolate. What about you?
You said it. You said it. My New Year's resolution, which again is probably not a mantra I should just embody for New Year's, but it's to be kinder to myself.
Mhm.
100%. Yeah, that's it. Just try and be kind to myself and keep going on my therapy journey. Yeah.
Yay, therapy journey. I think, well, mine is going to be starting up again soon. I have emailed and been chatting with my therapist, so we're going to get that in the books for the maybe not the kind of first or second week in January, but certainly for January. Yeah, get ahead of it.
Yeah, it must be good to even it must be good to feel that you've contacted, that rather than that overwhelming thing of like you should contact her in the
Yes.
back of your head. It's like
Yeah.
I'm taking the steps. If I contact, then it's on her, and then I've got to give a response, that sort of thing, which makes you feel like you're
Yeah.
doing something that should make you feel better, but
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah, it's just yeah, just it's preemptive, I think. It's prevention rather than cure. Let's just start the year nicely and be kind to ourselves, as you say, and it's all about looking after physical and mental health. So that's what we
you're
love to
damn,
do.
you're damn right. And speaking of looking after ourselves, what what are you currently reading?
Oh boy. Okay. So I have been texting. So Liv and I text a lot, and she knows this, but let's tell you, lovely people, all about it. So I've been really struggling to read the books that we're meant to be reading because I have been engrossed in a completely different series. It's unfinished, and I think it is criminally underrated. So it's the Broken Blade series by Evelyn Ward. I'm currently on the second book called The Blood Witch, and it is delicious. So the first book is also fantastic, The Queen's Blade. You're looking at witches. You're looking at a kind of personal queen's bodyguards. You're looking at
Interesting.
elements. Yep. You're looking at a vampire MMC.
Oh,
Mm. And I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler, but if you are thinking about reading it, maybe just quickly skip ahead. You're also looking at a little why choose a romance in book two.
oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
really,
Well,
really well written, lovely, and not romantasy. I would say it's definitely urban fantasy with a very kind of, I wouldn't say small romantic subplot, but it's not about saving the world together. He very much sees her as extremely powerful and respects the fuck out of that. And she just gets to go and be a badass on her own and then come back, and we get some top tier spice in this one, Liv.
oh, when you say urban fantasy, do you mean urban fantasy? Like set in a contemporary setting with a
Yeah.
fantasy?
Yeah.
Oh,
So our world, the human sort of race, has been wiped out entirely. We're in the future, but they've got all mod cons. So we've got a nightclub, a vampire nightclub, you know. We've got mobile phones. It's that kind of thing. And I don't normally like that, but this is really well written, very
I was,
impressive.
I was gonna say because that was gonna be my next thing. You aren't a big fan of an urban fantasy. I've been trying to get us to read an
Mm-mm.
urban fantasy for almost a year now.
Yeah,
Ah, Evelyn, thank you so much. There we go. Well,
there you go.
I've added that to my read list.
It's good. Some really good scenes. And I was constantly reading it, not last night, but the night before, and I was just like, because it was constant reveal, plot twist, reveal, so much betrayal, so much angst. But it's very like found family, friendship first, great representation. I think you would love it, to be honest. I think you would really enjoy it.
All right. Well, from the vibe I'm getting, right? Like we're doing it in a couple of weeks on the podcast. So,
So what have you been reading?
oh well, yeah, no, I have just finished the possibly the worst book I've ever read in my whole life.
No.
Well, that's the thing. It's not my fault for reading it. Should I have DNF'd it? Yes. But do I describe it like a car crash? Like I just couldn't look away, couldn't stop. It's a very seasonal specific read. It was called Santa Steps Out, and I just saw it. I was just scrolling through Facebook aimlessly as you do. I barely even use Facebook to post. I just have a bunch of groups on there that I get loads of like video game recommendations and book recommendations from. And there was this one cover that just appeared, and it was this weird cover of this sort of like demonic, like very human realistic fairy riding Santa in a fireplace. And I was just like, huh.
I
Um,
need to find this. Let me
and then
just.
I just saw there was Facebook. Somebody put a little thing about Facebook, like I couldn't stop. Yeah, you've seen it. That's it. Look at that face.
Wowzers. Okay.
Um, I couldn't like somebody basically had said on the thing like I couldn't stop. Like it was weird and strange, but yet I couldn't stop. And yeah, that was and I exactly got sucked into this little cult about Santa Steps Out. Basically, 100%. The too long didn't read. Long of short of it was Santa basically spends 20 to 30 years fucking the tooth fairy, but he has this like inner turmoil of personal like, oh, what's going on? I shouldn't be. I love my wife, Mrs. Claus, who's known as this like woman like dowdy and sad and like doesn't really want to have
Um,
sex. And then she finds out and then has revenge by fucking every single one of the elves at least 4 or 5 times. Doesn't make her feel better. Then there's a big reveal where God, the Christian God, is like, boom, I was Zeus and we were all Greek mythology people. And then the Easter Bunny's a right pervert. And there's a head reindeer called Lucifer. It was so weird, Amy. So weird. Somebody gets the tooth fairy, she eats teeth and then shits out coins almost instantaneously. That's how she get. If I
wow.
believed in the Tooth Fairy, I mean, this is not a book for children at all in any way. But if I still believed in the Tooth Fairy, that would horrify me. Anyway, yeah, terrifying. If you want to read something really weird next Christmas, I would recommend Santa Steps Out by Robert Devereux, purely because the sequel.
Is this a full-blown novel or is this a novella?
This is a full-blown novel. It's nearly 300 pages.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, because the second book is called Santa Claus Conquers the Homophobes.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I haven't read this one, and I probably don't intend to because weird. But Santa essentially, there's this young boy in his teen years, and he grows up. He's gay, but he grows up in a homophobic household and community. And God, the Father, obviously, grants them the challenge, three chances to bring about a change of heart in his homophobic household. I don't understand.
Wow.
I think it's all of these books have been written with a sort of a higher purpose or a higher sort of mind in them of like some sort of morality twist, etc.
Mm.
But it's hidden behind a bunch of weird shit.
It
So
sounds really odd. And I mean, I understand what you're saying about the morality thing, but if you really can't grasp it because of how weird it is, then is it doing what it should be doing, Robert? That's an
I don't know.
interesting one. Okay,
To be
cool.
fair,
So when was this book written? I'm just intrigued because the cover to me looks like a really old school kind of fantasy illustration.
yeah, so the Santa Claus, Santa Steps Out, I believe. Well, there's a bit in the back where he wrote it quite early on in the 70s or something or the 80s, but it wasn't published until later. But apparently there was this whole like everyone was desperate to publish it and then they were just shot down each time. I don't know how much of that is fiction or not.
Is that Robert that wrote that bit? He said that part. Okay, it was ahead of its
Oh,
time then. All right.
it's
Hmm.
yeah, it's he's also got some weird ones of like Santa and somebody else go and like try and change the error of Donald Trump's ways. So we know he's on our side.
Okay, all right, Robert. We see you. We see you. Interesting. So aside from it being yeah, out there, is the writing good? Are we talking? No. Okay, well, that's all we can say. Just try to redeem him there.
It's look, something kept me reading, right? Something did. So whether the writing's good or not, whether the plot's batshit mental, something kept me hooked. So there has to
Mhm.
be something about it that was compelling because I was just honestly, I was yeah. Do I agree that it's not really in my nature to DNF books? Yes. Do I think I should have DNF'd this? Probably. I mean,
I think that
you're
sums it up.
yeah, you're talking to the person that's still got the web page open for dating my ex's mafia dad. Just
We
waiting
haven't.
for updates.
Ah,
Waiting for updates.
I was going to say we haven't had an ex's Mafia Dad update in a while on the podcast, so I'm glad to know that that could potentially still come up.
I mean, it's been months. It's been months. If by some chance, but out of the 54 of you that follow us, if you are the author of marrying or having sex or whatever it's called with my ex's mafia dad, falling for my ex's mafia dad, please update it because it feels like we were at the end and I really just need at least a few more pages just to feel that completion, please. Please.
Please, we need closure.
So we've decided to change things around and we will now be introducing the book before the transition in this little section. Amy Watt, take it away.
Whoa. Okay, so this week we have read a TikTok sensation according to the front cover of the book. It's literally on the cover. It's Lights Out by Navessa Allen. It's a dark contemporary romance and it has trigger warnings up the wazoo. So please, even before you listen to this episode, going forward, please go and do your due diligence and read them. If you download the sample on Amazon or wherever, you'll get it from there. It's at the very front of the book. They're all listed. You don't have to go on the website. You don't have to do any proper, don't have to really go very far to find them, which we do appreciate. Well done, Navessa. But please do read them because there are so many. And even in this summary, I'm going to mention some triggering topics because you can't talk about this book without discussing triggering topics. So,
Yeah,
fair
yeah.
warning.
Just to name a few, we've got sexually explicit discussion and scenes, mention of off-page rape, child abuse, It's been remembered blood and gore, mental health, stalking, invasion of privacy, home invasion, hidden cameras, death, then a bunch of kinks. So like breath play, knife play, gun play, fear play, primal play, mask play, and consensual dubious consent.
There you go. So thank you for listing those, Liv, because I think it is important to just make it clear when we say there are trigger warnings for this one, we truly mean there are trigger warnings for this one. So yeah, go and have a look. And if you don't feel that this one's for you, don't worry about it. Join us in the next one. We don't do dark romance very often, as you know. So next week's episode, you can join us for that one instead. But if you are staying, I have a summary. Now, full disclosure, there's a part of this book, and you'll know when it absolutely jumps the shark, where the summary was difficult to write. So you might I might see Liv's face during this being like, you've just missed out a really important part, but we can discuss that. That is the beauty of the speedy summary. So here we go, just so you can get a flavour of what the book is about.
Being kinder to ourselves, Rain, that we've discovered. Maybe we should make
Yes,
this 90 seconds, because
I
we've
love
only
it.
successfully managed one in a minute.
Yeah. And I'm going to have to read this one probably quite slowly because you're not going to believe what happens in this book. Okay. Ali, an overworked nurse, enjoys watching sexy social media videos of masked men in provocative situations. Her particular favourite content creator is the Faceless Man. After one particularly stressful shift, Ali leaves a comment on one of his videos asking him to break into her home wearing the mask. The Faceless Man, aka Josh, does just that. The story then picks up the pace as Ali and Josh begin a dark, intense relationship. Josh remains masked during this time to hide his identity, but our girl Ali instantly realises that he is the roommate of her ex-boyfriend. A creepy serial rapist and possible murderer, Bradley Bloom, is on the prowl, and after a run in with him, he turns up at Ali's back door and tries to break into her house. Thankfully, Josh is security conscious and has rigged up many security devices to keep his beloved safe. One of his alarms alerts him to the intruder before he gets inside. Josh takes him down with a punch, and Ali gets some kicks in too. They plan to drop Bradley off at the family of his last victim so they can exact their revenge, but a mistaken case of duct taping both his mouth and nose see the duo left with a dead body. Josh, after revealing his identity, asks Ali to be his girlfriend, with the dead body still in the car, and she happily agrees. Conveniently, Ali's uncle has mob connections, so our lovebirds decide to enlist his help in disposing of the body. Josh agrees to help with the family business, and Ali learns that he is the son of the Ken doll killer, a prolific serial killer from the past. Ali initially freaks out, but then gets over the shock, and it doesn't change her love for Josh. We witness some cervix bruising, shower sex, and then Josh uses his hacking skills to cover up the murder and ensure Bradley's crimes are discovered. All's well that ends well. The police assume Bradley has fled the country and his victims' bodies are discovered. And lovies are exchanged, and the epilogue includes a marriage proposal and feral woodland sex. Hooray!
Hooray! 1 minute 45 seconds.
Okay. So just about. Maybe if I'd been quicker to read it, we would have been there. But I thought, gotta give this one its place, considering how mad the storyline goes.
Um,
Alrighty.
yeah, I mean, obviously, like Amy said before, we don't normally do dark romance. Is this our first official dark romance?
No, I think Five Brothers probably would be classed as a dark romance too. But we don't
I don't,
talk about that.
I don't even think you can class Five Brothers as a book, let alone anything else. Um, right, yeah,
Um,
okay, right, okay, so yeah, fine, okay, yeah, no, that's fair. Well, I'm thrown by that. The first thing I want to talk about is obviously this sensation of masked man TikTok or masked man, whatever. So I have spent the last, I don't know, few days searching through masked men TikTok. That's really fucked up our algorithm because I did it on our page that was TikTok.
I was going to say, please tell me you used our TikTok account to do that. Okay,
I
good.
did. I absolutely did. And there are some points in this book that I found really quite sexy. I was like, ooh, yeah, ooh,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
quite hot. Ooh, yeah.
Mm.
Um, Masked man TikTok, I do not find sexy.
Oh, no.
Um,
What are we talking about when we talk about Mass Man TikTok? Because when I was reading it, I had a feeling it was a thing, just like everything on the internet is a thing. But I didn't think it would be something you could find easily on TikTok. So is it exactly as it's described, wearing kind of custom face masks and
See, this is the only thing I sort of didn't get the vibe for. I was
Okay.
pretty sure. Yeah, he talks about having a particular kind of mask that's custom made or whatever. Yet
Oh.
there is not a lot of description that goes into the mask to make me think it's not the Scream mask.
I had the scream mask in my head the whole time.
Me too. And so does basically every fucker else on mask ban TikTok. Like, there's
Ah, okay.
a few people have like a half skull type thing, and like some of them have like things. But yeah, no, it's basically muscly fucking oiled up guys, kind of tattooed all over, wearing the scream mask with being like that's the music in the background.
No.
Uh,
Okay, okay.
it's so fucking cringe.
It sounds cringe. And are the comments along the same lines as Ali's comments? Are they all in? Is it very popular?
I spent too much time looking at the fucking content. I didn't look at the comments. I didn't consider that anybody would believably be that turned on. So I just assumed that no. But yeah, just have a quick look now. Masked men.
Because in the story, there is a real community around the masked men of TikTok, and Ali finds herself almost a sort of, I guess they're extremely jealous of her because they recognize who she is and she's got a presence on there. She comments on every single one of his videos. She's like a super fan.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm.
All of the comments on this one video I've seen, so I don't know if this is constantly a theme throughout, is just okay, Josh from Lights Out. Um, I've just read Lights Out. I just started Lights Out right now, and it's ruined my expectations of these thirst traps. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting. I did a bit of research as well because I wanted to kind of get an idea of Navessa Allen's inspiration, but you've kind of explained where that's came from. But she also talked about her favorite masked sexy men. So
Okay.
Scream was on there. The Scream mask was up there for her. And so was Ghost from Call of Duty, kind of like a
I think,
skull.
yeah, I think that might be the other one I'd seen.
So she's got it from somewhere. There is this must have been a thing before Lights Out, but maybe just nowhere near as popular.
Yeah, nah, there's a guy with a call sign phobia. That's what he's called. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I think this is the thing. Anyway,
I'll have to have a look. If it's on our TikTok, I can safely have a look without messing up my For You page. That's good.
I'll um I'll save some videos for you so that you can just go into our saved and have a look. Oh,
I'm
this
absolutely loving that though, that the comments are like, okay, Josh from Lights Out. So funny.
yeah.
I wonder what that user thinks. I wonder if they know about the book and think, oh,
I think they must, because to get away from actually talking about the book specifically, but we'll come straight back to it. I think Book Talk has bred a whole new a whole new gap in the market for men to be this kind of way on social media. Do you know, like I've seen so
for
many
real.
different,
Yeah.
mostly in stitches that then parody them, videos that then like go on to be like what the fuck, and like pretend to be the cameraman behind the scenes. Like that is the extent to what I've seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone like I don't know flips the duvet and then all of a sudden they're like on top of you and you're just like
Please leave me alone.
it's and it's that thing, right, isn't it, that's like what we read in fantasy or what we read in books that potentially paint this fantasy. It's almost because we don't have them in front of us or whatever. Well, for me personally, because I don't have it in front of it, I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I could get on with this. If I
Yes.
was in the room with that, I would be cringed out to hell. I'd be like sat with me knees up to me chest, like, please God, stop.
Oh yeah, it'd be like the Sahara. There's no chance. Like absolutely no way. And there was we'll talk about Ick of the Week in a minute, but just the thought of it, the thought of because quite a lot of the book he remains masked even when they're just like driving. That isn't going to look sexy outside of a TikTok video with good lighting and music and that
Yeah.
kind of atmosphere. It's just going to look
Also,
mental.
also, who's driving past them thinking this is fine?
I know. I know. I know. That's terrifying. That person's been abducted by a masked man. Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yes, I won't do anything then.
Exactly. I'll just leave it. Okay. So we know that and well, you've showed us that we don't have that kind of following in real life for these mass men TikTok creators necessarily. But in our story, our main character, Ali, is down bad for these videos. She loves them.
Yeah, she does. It definitely sounds as if there's more of them, I think, than exist. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a small sample size that I have looked at, and so I could be wrong.
You just haven't found the faceless man yet. You haven't found that your favorite creator.
Clearly not, not yet.
So Ali's got a very stressful job. She works for in a trauma unit in a hospital,
Yeah,
right?
which just to start us off with, sorry, Ems, I'm cutting you off completely there. Her job is like everything, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Then
mm-hmm.
I mean, they get around it by taking off a couple of weeks. Like,
I love that. I love that they just took time off together,
she
just
has a
right as all this drama started. I was like, oh, that's convenient, isn't it? That's good. That's good
she
timing.
has, she has a little holiday, but like instead of like that period beforehand, so there's a period where she's working all the time and oh my God, it's really stressful and
Mm,
then stuff starts to happen. And then all of a sudden the job doesn't exist anymore. And then it does again for the plot point of the awful rapist guy.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and then it's time off. And then that's it. That I don't even think it's ever mentioned again.
No, it's not ever mentioned again. Oh, well, to be fair, she does patch him up at one point, so we get a little bit of an insight into her skills. But yeah, at the start, I thought it was going to be very prevalent in the story, and I think actually it made sense for it to be. I quite liked the fact that she had a really stressful job. She wanted to come home, almost like completely disconnect from the real world, and these videos were an escape for her. It made sense to me more. But as the plot continued and her job just, as you say, failed to be mentioned anymore, I didn't feel that there was much else about her. I didn't
It
get
was
much more.
it proved to no longer be useful and therefore it was left by the wayside. And fine, like, fair enough,
Mm.
I'm not looking to these. I didn't come into this expecting a really airtight,
No.
I don't know, I'm not going to say plot, airtight stuff, but
Yes.
I just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just a bit like, oh, come on. If you're going to do that, just make her job completely insignificant then.
Exactly. Yeah, just barely mention it. That would make way more sense. I just feel like, again, she suffered from that thing that a lot of authors do, where the female main character is just not that important and there's no real depth to them and there's no real substance there. And it's a shame because that's the person. I know that it's supposed to be a self-insert for us. Like, I suppose we are supposed to see ourselves as the main character. I get it. But
Interesting.
it's not, I don't find it interesting to read.
Yeah, I'd never considered that the reason the female main character is so bleh is because we're supposed to put ourselves there. Um, so very much like a Your Name fan fiction. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. And maybe that's why they fail to give them too much of a identity because then I guess it then means that you can no longer relate or you can no longer put yourself in that position, you know?
Yeah.
But it just felt a bit, I don't know. I didn't get a lot from her.
Well, it was weird. Like, I think you can be forgiven for thinking of both sides, right? Because there's almost nothing about her, but then there's so many strong things about her. Mm, bear with me. Um, there's so many like strong air quote things about her where like the only thing I'm happy to run straight into danger. Like, oh, I won't
Yeah.
leave Josh. No. Even though it's a hindrance, or like, he asks me to stay in this room and I'm not going, she's got one solid thing that she does consistently. Um,
Hmm.
and that is not necessarily disobey, but like what's the word I'm looking for? Because obviously, like, it's her apartment. When this guy breaks in, Josh is like, please stay here. I need to know you're safe or whatever. And there's a vibe of that of like, well, obviously not, I'm gonna help. This is my apartment. But don't then
Yeah.
scare him once he's managed to like be like, no fucking way, we're going together. This is what's gonna fucking happen. Two against one is better. Argue your point there. Don't fucking let him go and then go
And then
in.
defy it. Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Yeah. I just felt like, now I get it. I get it. She was had a couple of lines and she wrote a comment inviting the masked man into her home. And then when she discovers that he has been in her home because she recognizes her bedroom in the video, the reaction was not enough for me. It was not enough. I would have been shitting my pants if that happened to me.
How many times as well? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting it to happen. I'm not expecting to comment on a TikTok or whatever and then for it to become reality. But how long did it take her to fucking figure out it was him? It was, oh, that's my comforter. Oh, we've got the same comforter. Oh, how fun. Like,
I know, when every other video she said was against like a dark headboard in a dark room, and now it's like, oh, that looks like my bedroom, you think?
what I love as well is like make this up to be like, oh, I've just left this one comment. No, because Josh does this thing where he finds every comment she's ever made, and there's loads of them.
I love how she's trying to like downplay it to us, like play it cool, like it was just one comment, and then he totally exposes her and is like, no, no, look at all the comments.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the reaction wasn't strong enough. You would have been scared. That's terrifying.
And also for the mask to be left there.
I know. Uh, uh,
And how does she justify it to herself? How does she justify? I mean, obviously she like puts the thing and she gets scared and stuff, but then she's like, "Oh, the cat's fine." So he didn't hurt the cat.
Right. We're not talking about X yet, but the cat thing was a bit of an ick for me, to be honest. And I know it wasn't supposed to be. I know everybody liked it, but it was too much. It was too many references to the bloody cat. I'm like, and I like cats, but she used an awful lot of the cat for reasoning and justification. Like, as you say, like, oh, he didn't hurt the cat, so he can't be that bad a guy. You're like, he broke into your house.
Yeah. I wonder if we would consider, so considering a different plot line, clearly he's been made to be her ex's roommate, someone they've met before.
Yep,
That almost softens that blow, right? Of like him
totally does.
ever. If he
Yes.
didn't know her and just found her comment as the faceless man and was like, oh yeah, all right, fine, stalked her profile a little bit and was like, yeah, she's a hottie or whatever,
Mm,
and then
hmm
decided to break in, I would be like, oh, so no, this is bad. This is bad.
hmm
No, so we have that justification, right? Like it's is it I mean, is it a red flag? Yes, in the real life, it would be a red flag.
I really liked the fact that she knew it was him because I was ready to be annoyed by her being like, oh, who is it? I can't work it out. Who could it be? But the fact that she was instantly like, it's Josh. I know it's Josh. Straight away, it's him. I thought, yes, this is realistic. This I can get on board with. You seem like an intelligent character now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I understand you completely. There was a part of me that you mentioned it before when you were saying about like, and he's still wearing the mask in the car. It's like, at what point, if he hadn't, so he basically accidentally, well, no, she's known it's Josh for a really long time, and then she he accidentally kills the rapist after they've like drugged him and put him like yeah, by putting masking tape over his mouth and his nose, which I love so much because all the way through this book we get from Josh like, oh, I'm just like my dad, I'm such a killer, oh my god. A killer would know not to do that, like somebody
Yeah.
who nuanced in the art of killing or whatever, or wants to take like great pleasure from it or whatever, wouldn't make that fucking rookie mistake of cutting off
Yeah.
two
I,
airways.
I like Josh. I thought there was a lot more to him than Ali, and I actually thought his internal struggle and his conflict with his concerns that he was turning into his dad was really like I actually felt a lot of empathy for him.
But yeah, sorry. So basically, he realizes he's accidentally killed him, and then he goes and he's sick in a bush, and he takes his mask
Yes.
off. And it's probably one of the best lines in the book where she goes, "Now's probably not the best time, but I knew it was you." Like,
It's the fact he's also doing a voice.
oh, the voice modulator. Oh my God. Can you imagine the bit where he gets a voice modulator absolutely fine, whatever, whatever. But then he forgets it one time and he's just going, No.
We're supposed to find that like I mean maybe in the height of everything maybe in the moment it would be a bit like oh this is exciting mass man but afterwards when you're like just having a cup of tea and doing couple things if he's still talking like that
Yeah, no, I
yeah
forgot that he still proceeds to do like he makes her breakfast. He does very romantic things
hmm
for her in the mask, and I forget that. Just imagine he's just there like frying bacon, and she comes and he's like, "Good morning."
exactly
But what's mad about it is I'm trying to do that voice, and I'm doing the classic. We'll call it a Batman voice. I'm doing the Batman
they
voice,
do they say it's like a Batman voice so yeah you're
but you
right
can still hear it's me, right? You
right
still,
away
hey Amy, how you doing?
Totally no. And she knows who he is, so she's spoken to him. And it also mentions quite a lot that he slips up. So he must just be talking in a normal voice and then realize and have to put it on.
Oh, can you put Fred back in the carrier?
Just leave it. Oh man. Yeah. Mm.
And to be fair, that only adds to my enjoyment of Josh. Like,
Exactly. It's yeah, I was totally like I said before, I really did enjoy his character. I'm not saying that put me off him. I think it actually endeared him to me more.
yeah, I completely
Because
agree.
yeah, because we're not
We
really big into like, well, we are sometimes, I know that, but like neither of us are massively like alpha man has to be like really dark and like we want this and like I would have hated it if he was like that the whole way through it, like committed to the bit so much. I think it was way funnier when he messed it up.
That's it. And I think, if anything, that's quite jarring. Like, so I think this book is a great book for people like you and I who aren't big dark romance girlies, but like, we like a bit of danger every now and again. Who
Mm,
doesn't? Whatever. Because there are quite good elements of comedy within this. Um,
yeah.
and it doesn't follow the trope of like, say, a mafia romance where your big man's just like constantly like bang bang, kill kill, etc. etc. I'm a big alpha, whatever. Um,
Mm.
you know, Josh's persona is he's exactly that. It's a persona. It's not real. It's pretend,
No.
but like he does have this something inside of him where he can go to that uses to channel his, I don't know, anger or whatever. I don't fucking know. Um,
Yeah, it's a kink, right, for both of them, and I think that it's written quite well. I think it they have a really quite a nice relationship. I mean, it's a bit rushed. Let's not, I mean, go into that. It's ridiculously quick,
no,
but
is it quick though? It is in a way, but does it just fucking go off a cliff? Like, so essentially
yeah.
we get this sort of budding relationship where like he then is, yeah, like we said, cooking in the masked man outfit. Then the rapist comes, which is fine. It's not fine, obviously. The rapist is a horrible, horrible human being. Um, but it makes sense because him and Ali have an altercation. He was accused previously. A woman comes in, I think post pre-book,
Mhm.
um, and
Yeah.
sort of like has accused this man of, she's getting fixed up, of raping her, and then he's in the hospital being beaten up by some of her family members, and him and Ali have this altercation, and she fucking doesn't let him back down, and she doesn't really show she's scared of him, and so like this whole thing happens. So it makes sense that then he would try and find her to then kill her. I get that. I do.
Mm.
Where did the fucking mafia come from? We get next to nothing about Ali's family, and there's clearly a reason for that. But we then find out. So yeah, Josh kills him by accident, and they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh shit!" And yeah, and then Ali's like, "Oh no, I know where we can take him." And then all of a sudden, they've got this whole full-on secret SAS assault on the fucking house of his house to get his computer and everything. And then it's mad. There's this whole fucking Secret Service mission, not Secret Service, definitely not within the law, but like these Marine guys,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
mercenaries maybe. I just
Yeah, it certainly fell off for me at that point. I just didn't really know what I was reading anymore. I kind of was with it, and then I think, because is it about halfway through that we see the death of? I think it is, but it's probably just over
I
halfway, I
think,
think.
yeah, maybe it's about, I think it's about 55% when
Mm.
he breaks into the house. So we're looking at maybe about 60% when he is dead. And then they go to her uncle, who, yeah, runs some sort of mafia, part of the mafia. And
Kind of
essentially,
but yeah, not really, but yes, sort of.
then, yeah, so they get split up for a little while when she goes in to hide at his flat. And then he then gets taken to get intimidated and then told he needs to help. And then not once despite the fact that Josh tells you all the way through the book, oh, I barely leave the house, because I don't want to be recognized. Not once does any of the big bad bastards in the mafia who would know about people fucking like murdering people in their where they are and stuff. Not once does anyone recognize him as the son of this fucking massive serial killer.
I know, I thought they did. I thought the scene where he's in the car and they cock the gun and like hold the gun to him. I thought, okay, they've realized who he is and they're basically like saying you can't be with her, like
Yeah.
warning him off. No, they just wanted him to help break into this house and steal hack. What was it? Steal, get into the laptop and hack the files. And there was a lot of hacking going on. We were hacking
Oh,
everything at one point.
do you know what? We should do it now. We'll do ick of the week now because that leans into my ick.
Okay,
Um,
go for it.
Ick of the week. Ick, 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 ick. Again, I'm sure we'll have some sort of musical accompaniment for that. My ick of the week is literally the use of the word hacking in anything and everything.
I know.
Like, but in this
Like
specifically, it's just, along with
this.
hacking, I was pretty good at skulking around at night. There's just something about the word hacking that sounds so fucking infantile that it just makes me laugh and it completely takes me out of it. And it's like,
I get
I'm
it.
good at hacking. When somebody
Yeah.
writes thing. But they write it so it's like capital letters, small, lowercase, capital letters, lowercase.
Yes.
I'm good at hacking. That's how I feel like it should be written.
Totally get it. I actually just wanted to look it up on Kindle there to see how many times hacking or hack is used in this book. 53.
Jesus Christ.
53 times. I feel like hacking's had its day as well. Like it used to be quite cool and well, not really used to be cool, but people used to think it was kind of a cool
It's
like, back in like the NCIS days or like CSI Miami or whatever, when they sit with the black screen and the green writing and it's like, I'm in. Not now.
what for me. That's it's not fine. I could probably get away with that. For me, it's not so much hacking that fucks me off. It's when they've got an image on things like NCIS and they're like enhance, enhance. It doesn't work like that, guys. It doesn't work like that. You can't get the license plate from a photo you took 30 meters away.
Not by
Like,
just typing random letters into a computer either. They never just like you, because if it was me that was going to try that, I would just try and like zoom in. They never zoom in. They just go, and then it's like perfect, perfect quality.
uh,
Yeah, I got a lot of that when I was reading this. Anytime hacking was mentioned, I just cringed. Totally get your ick of the week. Agree.
agree. And yours would be the cat dad relationship that he has.
Yeah, and the scene in the shower which I referenced in the summary when I mentioned cervix bruising, because there is some kind of description where he does it to the point where it hits something deeper, something more, and I was like, "What's that? What anatomical thing are we doing there?"
A lung.
It comes out of her mouth. He's huge, of course. We have that. That's also a neck because we've discussed that at length before. At length. But in this
But
story, it's particularly it's mentioned a lot just how ridiculously big he is.
But it's just how much bigger can you get than the biggest anyone's ever read? Like, what is he? Fucking down to his own ankle. Like that just you can't get hard with that. You just die or pass out. Like it's oh,
I
oh.
know, I
I'm
know.
sorry. I love this podcast very much, but it does make me hate every single book we read very
I
much.
know. Because before we came into this, I was ready to say I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I had a good time, and now I'm like, oh, worst thing I've ever read. Terrible.
Ugh. Is it worse than Santa Steps Out? No,
Mm,
no, it's not.
no, I doubt it is. I doubt it is.
All right, well,
Speaking of worst thing you've ever read,
yeah, so a couple of episodes ago, maybe about five or six, we did a bit where we read some reviews, and I think we got a bit of positive feedback on that. So we're going to keep doing that again.
mhm.
So yeah, each week, one of us will take a couple of points from a 1 star, a couple of points from a 5 star. We'll talk about it, and maybe it'll be things that we've already talked about in the book, or sorry, in the pod. Maybe it'll be things we've already talked about in the podcast. But that's just, us including the community and making us feel good about the points we've raised. So take it away, Amy.
Okay, let's. Do you want one or do you want five? Do you want to start with the positives or the negatives?
We were already in the negative. Let's start with the negatives and then we
Let's
can
start
end
with
with the
it.
positives.
Okay, so I read many one-star reviews about this book, and a common theme that popped up quite a lot was that it's unrealistic that an educated woman would feel so strongly about the mask talk thirst traps, especially going so far as to comment on every single video. Thoughts?
Um, well, I think we have already talked about that, right? Like you said it yourself. Like, yes, she's educated, she has this. I don't think there's ever any point where in the book she comes across as stupid sometimes. Like,
No.
female MCs, there's almost a trope that they make silly decisions and we're there basically shaking the book.
Mm-hmm.
Ali does anything that's overly too, ridiculous in that regard. But you're right, she has a stressful job. She uses this as a form of escapism. She doesn't comment on it expecting anything to happen. This
No,
is
I think that's unfair. I think that's totally unfair to say that. And I don't think there's any correlation between being intelligent and finding something hot. Like, what, you can't find this hot because you're educated. Like, why would
it,
that be?
it's that the whole view that people who read things like literary fiction or classics, you know, that they almost view, I'm not saying they do, but like it's that there's a hierarchy in the genres that we read almost. That comment is propping that stereotype up. Just because you read
Mm,
classics and literary fiction doesn't make you any smarter than the people that read smut or fantasy or monster porn or anything like that. It just we all like what we like, and
that's
just
it.
because we indulge in something like dark romance or we love fantasy or whatever doesn't mean that we want the events of those books to happen to us.
No, totally, absolutely agree. And I think this is just an extension of, it's a similar thing as book talk, isn't it? She's
Yeah,
found something a bit like a spicy book to distract herself from a really tough, difficult job that she does. And she wants to come home and completely unwind and relax. And yeah, you're right. I don't think there's has any bearing on how intelligent otherwise she is. So I think that's very unfair. Also, this is mainstream now because I saw this in a bookshop the other day, and I also read that this has sold out online. So you actually struggle to order it, or not as an ebook, but if you want to go on to
yeah,
booksellers online and order it, it actually had a waiting list at one point. So this is huge.
that's mad. That's crazy. A bit. I don't know if you read the acknowledgements at the end, but did you read that this was released as a web serial?
Yes, I did. I didn't know
Oh,
that, but I was really interested to read that.
no, I didn't know either. I think it really made me remember realize why it's potentially written in that, like, we have the almost the first half of the book which is like them getting to know each other and then something crazy happens to them. It
Yeah.
makes in that serial element of what's going to happen this week or this month or whatever. Yeah, that fits a
Yeah.
bit more rather than a full book's plot. So yeah.
I think this would make a really cool, like, graphic novel. I had lots of like images in my head reading it, and I think it would be quite, I think it could be elevated a little bit by that.
Yeah, you don't want to see somebody being fucked by a knife handle.
Well, technically, she did it herself, right? I mean, it was very consensual.
100%. Which we can discuss the sex after you have told us about the positive review. But was there anything else from the 1 stars that you got, or was that sort of the vibes?
No, I think we've commented on most of it, to be honest. A lot of people just said it. I'll come to the kind of an overarching comment and then we can discuss what we sit with it. But it was very much like, we won't talk about this just now, but the criticism was either it's not dark enough or
Right.
it's too dark. So it
Okay.
depends on how much this content people have read, what, what their own experiences are. But it was obviously quite a polarizing book in that sense.
Hmm. Well, for sure, yeah.
But we can discuss that in a minute. Let's go into the 5 stars because it does lead very nicely into what we were just talking about. So, one of the things people had said, and we've discussed this a little bit already, is that it was actually really funny and that the comic scenes were done well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, some of them made me laugh. I loved the part where she said something about baklava, and he was like, "It's a balaclava."
Yep. I love
Baklava is
that.
a delicious dessert. I thought that's great. That made me laugh.
I actually,
Um, yeah,
I actually have a line that I really loved that was while my ovaries donned their war paint and started metaphorically chucking eggs at the man. Like
yeah,
I genuinely
yeah.
laughed at that. It's
I
funny.
did. It's
Anything
funny.
that's new and a different take on like, oh, I was wet or oh, I'm pregnant now or whatever. Anything
Oh
that's
yeah.
basically this is the vibe I want to give you, but I'm gonna do it in a funny way. So
Loved it. Loved it. Yeah, no, I like that. And well written sex scenes. Well written, well done, healthy in the sense that there was consent. What do
yeah.
you think?
Um, I think yeah, I think I mean by the time we got to the end of the book, I couldn't be asked anymore.
I was
Um,
bored. Yeah, the sex scenes didn't fill me up. Even the epilogue bit, the kind of
oh
woodland sex
God,
scene, I was just flipping through that to see how it was going to end and if there was going to be a proposal or something, because I knew we were going to get something. So I
yeah.
didn't really read that in much detail, to be honest.
I do think that actually sometimes it going back to that it's too dark, it's not dark enough. There were definitely elements where like obviously the sex scene, the first time they sort of have some sex and stuff like that, it it's like very he's very giving, which is a
Hmm.
big positive, a big green flag. Like you said, the cervix bruising, like what the fuck's that about? But then I think the jarringness of it, so like there's a bit I think she mentions like in one sentence anal penetration, clit stimulation, nipple play, and then it goes on to something be like not to mention the knife handle filling me up. And I think I just put a note being like fucking hell. Like
The knife thing got me when he stabbed it into the bed. I was like, "Whoa! I think I know what's going to happen here, but really? All right,
like
okay."
obviously there's nothing new about inserting inanimate objects into any sort of sexual holes or not if the case may be, but like there's no like surprises in that regard. Like it's we've all watched I don't know A&E 24 hours or whatever, and someone always comes up with something.
I slipped and fell. Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but but I just couldn't there was a bit where she was describing Navessa was describing the knife handle as something that was clearly different than the kitchen knife handles that you see on Sabatier knives, but I just couldn't not see them. I was just
I
there like how that must be so, and it's she mentions how she basically describes it like a phallic fucking penis handle.
Yeah, it's a sexy knife handle, which is just, yeah. I think there was a lot of that, and that she was almost trying to be like, no, 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 it is sexy, I promise, it is. And we were kind of like, you're over explaining it. Just leave it alone. Let us fill in the blanks. We know what a knife handle looks like. It's okay. It's weird enough as it
Yeah,
is.
but it's sexy. Yeah. Yeah,
Mm, mm.
it was I struggled to I wasn't appalled by it, but I also wasn't turned on by it. Like it was
No.
sort of middle, so if anything, I was getting nothing from it. I'm just reading like, oh, this is what's going on, eh? Like so
Yeah, and the kind of logistics, which again I understand, she wants to be responsible, she wants to do what she should as an author, I get it, but sometimes it can take you a little bit out of the story. So when he got a little antiseptic wipe out and cleaned it, I was like, oh, okay, that's
just
cool.
yeah, yeah, just Yeah, but then there were also some bits where he holds the knife up to her throat while she orgasms, and whilst again not my kink, but no kink shaming. Um, and then afterwards he says it was the dull side of the knife. It was the blade was
Hmm.
never any. Bro, I really like that because
Yeah,
then
yeah,
there's a part of me that, unbeknowingly to myself at the time, was thinking, "Fucking hell, that's dangerous. What if one of them slips? She's
yeah.
dead." But then the fact that he explains that to tell her that she was in no danger, actually, I enjoyed that. So yeah,
I did.
I
And I liked it after the fact more, to be honest, because I think it's good to do that as part of the kind of like the aftercare stuff. That makes a lot of sense. I get it. I think sometimes trying to do it in the middle of things can take people out of it a little bit and make it a little bit too clinical. Um, but I think you're totally right. It has to be in there somewhere. And actually, it was well done. And at that point, it was well done.
and the trigger warning that they talk about with the dubious consensual consent, uh, it's very well done. Like she it's part of a sort of a role play type scenario, and she are we sort of assuming we're talking about the time where she goes to sleep and finds herself woken up tied to the bed?
Yeah, I was thinking that time, or even the running away thing at the end, because she's proper running away from him in the forest, and he's chasing her down. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So, but that is a game into which she has played, and I did enjoy. I found it a bit interesting that there's no use of safe words because he says we don't need safe words. You tell me to stop, I will stop.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, so we're not doing any of the kind of dubious non-consent stuff where it's like, no, no, please, like it's not that. It's if you're going to use the word no and you're not actively enjoying yourself or looking like you're enjoying yourself, I'm not into it anymore. So interesting,
It's an interesting one because that can be so easily misconstrued, right? Especially in a
totally.
real world scenario. So I think I understood what was trying to be done there, but it it was a little probably a little confusing. There's a reason safe words exist because they're words that would never be said in that scenario, so that when one says them,
I agree. I actually didn't think the whole not using safe words was a good idea, to be honest, because I think that you don't always necessarily have to not look like you're enjoying yourself. You can't always pick up on that, and that can't be all that you use to determine whether or not the consent is still there. So I think it would have made sense to have that. Why take it out? I didn't understand why not just have it.
I think maybe there's an element of like that what you were saying about like the little antiseptic wipe, like it's a bit clinical to be like to have the safe word. So maybe she's trying to make it a bit more like we don't need safe words because that sort of thing. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
Mm-hmm.
then is sexy, but like we don't need to do that clinical thing of like whatever, because generally in books for the plot, I find, and I don't know if you agree with this, when a safe word's used and it's something like, I don't know, papaya or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the reason we're told a safe word exists in books, in plots, and things is so that it can be used by a character later on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever read a book that tells us in the for the for, but it's not. I'm not, and that in a way doesn't mimic real life because many people have many different kinks. They have their safe words and they've never had to use them. But
Mm-hmm.
that's how I found with books and plots and things, especially when it's something like someone who's necessarily just finding out their new kinks and stuff. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
saying that safe words can't be used or should be used or whatever, but I generally found that in most books, when especially things like, anything that's like, oh, the new young innocent girl, the reason they use
Yes. Yeah.
words is so that there's a plot point where, oh, they've crossed the line, papaya, and it's like a plot point rather than
Yes.
being used as a consent thing.
Yeah. 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 Which is a shame because I think you could have used it. It would be interesting to see it not used in a kind of really dire situation, just part of a more a routine, healthy relationship. And it's just showcasing that it's okay to use it. It doesn't ruin the moment. It's just a case of making sure everybody's still 100% into it.
I completely agree. Yeah, if they'd have said, I don't know what this would be, because they're normally words, especially for the plot in books or whatever, they're normally words that like mean something or whatever. So it could
Hmm.
be like duct tape. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know. But that wouldn't make any sense. It would have to be a word completely out of the way.
Um,
Probably use TikTok. They'd probably
mhm,
say,
yeah.
they'd be, oh, our safe word's TikTok, and it'd be like, oh, cutie cute. And to never use it would be great, and to use it as a
Yeah.
plot point to actually be like him being like, is that okay? And she was like, did you hear me say TikTok? Like,
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
and then he's like, no, and it's like, then all's okay, isn't it? Like, use it as a way to almost to help the plot, but to further it in a different way, to you to comfort rather than to shame.
Yes, and to bring them closer together as well. Because I think if the trust is there, then we're all for it, right? That's what we want to read.
That's all safe words are, is a further form of consent and a form of trust. Oh my God. Oh,
Smashed
it's
it.
good to be back. It's good to be back.
Final thoughts. Oh, right. Okay. So I have a question. And it just kept coming up again and again and again when I was looking at the 1 star versus 5 star reviews. And
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, very polarizing, even within the dark romance community, I would say. Some people say this book is not dark enough, and they reference books like Haunting Adeline to compare and I guess contrast. Too dark is another criticism. So it's too much, especially things like the knife play, the dubious non consent. It's just too graphic. For you personally, where does this sit compared to other dark romances you might have read, or if you haven't read them, how did you feel reading it? Did you feel comfortable, uncomfortable, too much, not enough? What did you think?
Um, I think I think the only time I felt like it was a bit like, ooh, was that bit I mentioned earlier where it was like nipple, anal, fucking knife hand, and I was like, ooh, actually, you put it into one line and it sounds a lot. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know, I don't think it was necessarily, I don't think it was dark. Sorry, I don't think it was too dark.
Okay.
Um, for sure. I think Navessa really set out the stall in terms of like consent was there. The situation and the context made it so that I don't think it ever got to too much of a dark place between
Hmm.
our two main characters. Obviously, the darker themes of the guy coming and the rapist and stuff, that's quite dark, but that I don't think that ever really bled too much into the narrative to
Hmm.
make me be like, fuck, this is real world shit. Like,
Hmm.
Um, in terms of not dark enough, I don't know what people would have done, to be honest with you. I mean, I haven't read Haunting Adeline, so I don't have a comparison here. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Well,
No. Hmm. I just know that it's sort of like infamous.
I think from what I've heard, I imagine it probably is quite darker than this. Like, if anything, seems like against her consent, the stalking, perhaps. Which maybe borders that line of too dark for me, but
Hmm.
I'm not sure
Hmm.
because I haven't read it. Is this the darkest thing I've ever read? That's what I'm trying to think about. Well, it's different, isn't it? Like I can't. I've read lots of different things, but I've not read this kind of like this is quite a one type. I wouldn't. It's a dark romance, but it's a dark romance with specifically masked men kink,
Yeah.
which
It's
it's
not the dark, it's not the darkest thing I've ever read, but then I read quite a lot of horror.
mm,
So there's a lot of dark themes within that. Crime, there's a lot of dark themes within that. I've read crime about, rapists, sexual assault, like some really horrible stuff. In terms of dark romance, it maybe is, but that's probably because I haven't read very much of it. I'd say it's a genre that I have probably explored the least of quite a few romantic sub-genres, I
yeah,
think. So I couldn't even really compare it to another because I don't think I've read enough to compare it to another.
I completely agree. Yeah, and we may be sitting on the fence in that answer, but actually, I'm going to say
Mm,
definitively, I don't think it's too dark. I also don't think it could be darker. Like, I'm going to say no to
yeah.
both of them. I know
I
that
would, yeah.
Here's the
I'd say that if you are going to use it as a, I don't know, I feel like it's hitting the mainstream. So if you are going to use it as the very first dark romance you've ever read, and you maybe don't typically read dark books, that you maybe read contemporary romance or fantasy romance, but I'm talking romantasy. I'm not talking about fantasy with a hint of romance. I wouldn't go into this thinking it's going to be a very palatable book. I think you need to read the trigger warnings and you need to really just check you're comfortable first because it's going to be scooping up an audience of people that maybe haven't had much experience of dark romance. And I'd say there are some themes in this that are triggering, are dark. And maybe we're a little bit desensitized to some of that because we have read quite wide.
Yeah, that is fine. You and I are quite, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I think basically, is it worth your time? If you don't like books with smut, no, it is not worth your time. If you do like books that are smutty, but haven't delved into the elements of dark romance, I think I might disagree with you, Ames. I think this could be quite a solid starter for dark romance, assuming you enjoy smutty type scenes.
Hmm.
And, I don't know how the knife scene will go down, but I do
Mm.
think the comedy elements in this and the relationship you get outside of the bedroom post that sort of 50% era is enough to soften some of the other
Yeah,
elements of the
that's
story.
fair. No, I think that's fair. I think it's is it worth your time? I mean it's pretty solidly written. There wasn't too many times I was reading it, and we've read some books where you're like, oh boy, that's not great. But I think it was pretty solid. I had a good time with it, and I think that it's not the worst thing that TikTok's ever recommended. So, I wouldn't say it's underhyped. I wouldn't say it's overhyped. I'd say it sits pretty comfortably where it is, to be honest. I don't think it takes itself that seriously either, to be fair.
No, no. I think it surprised me in some of the and some and not necessarily like, oh, I'm normally such a prude, but like it surprised me in that I enjoyed more of it than I thought I was going to. Um, but do I think ultimately is it worth your time? I know we've said that a lot. This final thoughts. I'm gonna say no.
Mm,
I'm gonna be definitive. I don't think it is.
I'm
Ah,
going. That's strong. That's strong.
I regret it.
No, no. I think I'm with you, to be honest. I'm trying to think of it more in the lines of what else could you read? Could you? Oh, do you know what? No, I'm going to go against what you said. I think it is. I think it is. I think it is. It's not brilliant, but as long as you're going into it with an understanding of you get what you get, you've read the trigger warnings, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's quite a cute little romance underneath everything else. And I like Josh. So as long as I like someone in the story, I think it's worth your time. But I wouldn't put it to the top of my TBR. And if you don't get round to reading it, I wouldn't worry about it because I don't think it's one of those like you must read this to be part of the conversation because I feel like there are other books like this and I bet the dark romance community are rolling their eyes and saying that's been done or there's so many better books that you could read but we are not knowledgeable enough to be able to do that this time.
No, no, for sure. And then with that regard, in terms of other books you could read, I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously we've mentioned Hawkeye, but please, whatever you do read, whatever comes up in recommendations, read the trigger warnings. There'll be things that will be for you, there'll be things that won't be for you. Obviously, thinking of other sort of sensationalized dark romance books, Butcher and Blackbird, which I've not read. Ames, I think you have. Could you put this on a similar playing field?
Um, I think in terms of the actions of the characters,
Yeah.
Butcher and Blackbird is darker.
Okay, okay. So
Because
there you go.
yeah, you've got two actual serial killers within that story, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
so,
they've done some really terrible things.
so in that regard, if you don't think that Lights Out was dark enough, Butcher and Blackbird could be for
Go
you.
with yeah, could be, could
If
be.
you thought that Butcher and Blackbird was too much, perhaps this book is for you. I feel really bad that I said it wasn't worth your time, so we're just
No, we need to know, and I think that's the point of this, like that's the point of the final thoughts, like in our opinion, is it? Yeah, and I also don't know what else you would read if you didn't enjoy this. I think if you don't enjoy this and this is too much for you, you're going to struggle to find a dark romance that's less dark than than this, to be honest, because I think it only gets more crazy and intense the further down that rabbit hole you go.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Despite not having read a lot, like from what I'm aware of in terms of themes, I think this is fairly, middle of the road for sure.
Yeah,
Ah, well,
there we are.
um, if you enjoyed
Okay.
this episode, you might see some of its clips on our TikTok and our Instagram, which is obviously Page Turners Pod. Um, and then if you want to email us, podcastpageturners@gmail. And that's it. We're really small and hamming in the social media bit. Amy, what are we reading next week?
Well, we are back in one of my favourite genres next week because we are going to be reading an autobiography for me. Can't wait, very excited. We're going to read Grady Hendrix again. His latest release. Like it's literally going to be very, very new when we read this. It's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I know you bought me a Grady Hendrix for my birthday last year, but I've not read it. Uh,
Okay.
but this is another Grady Hendrix, so it's nice. It'll be
Mhm.
nice to sort of have a what I imagine his writing's going to be like, and seeing a different take on a different scenario.
I think compared to the other book that I gave you, How to Sell a Haunted House, I think that all of his books will have a social commentary, always, 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 always. But I think that this one is going to be more aligned to the kind of topics that were dealt with in Southern Book Club. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what we think about it and how we find it.
Excellent. Well, we cannot wait for you to join us. If you simply cannot wait and want to enter yourself into the discussion, you can always comment on our episodes on Spotify. And we do our best to comment on them. If you so want to, if you go on to the Christmas Carol episode, you can see that my dad has commented on our episode. And bless him, he kept coming into me and being like, Olivia, it doesn't work. Olivia, it doesn't work. Because my mum and dad
Oh,
I live, they full name me. And it was because he'd written too many words. He'd gone over the character limit. And so I had to sit with him.
oh,
And he was just sat so sadly, like, I don't want to edit it. I thought it was pretty good. And I was like, we'll just have to edit
oh.
bigger words, Dad. Like, you just got to cutting it down. We just got to cut it down. So, yeah, you can see what my dad has to say. Very, very sweet man. Loved Christmas Carol.
Hmm.
Read it
Lovely
every
to
year.
see his comment. I did read it. It was lovely. Very nice to see a comment popping up. Yeah, get involved. We might even have a poll this time. We'll see. See if we can think of
Oh,
a poll topic.
Amy's great at the polls. I just shove in any hard shit. So yeah, have fun. But yes, we will see you next week, and yeah, happy reading.
Bye.